Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pythia.
Wait. Okay.
Have you noticed it's probably because we're doing the children. We've gone into
Oh, yeah.
It's child energy, of course. Oh God. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pythia. I'm Emma.
And I'm Joy.
My name's Linnea.
I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Sarita.
It's lovely to be back. And this month we've got a wonderful weave for you, asking the sacred spirits, the serpent herself, what are the children here to teach us at this time and how can we support them? Sarita is going to be reading you the history of Pythia, so you have an understanding of the foundation of the shamanic practice that we are coming from and bringing this work to you from. And then Linnea brings us the sacred weave this month. Each of us have undergone a particular shamanic practice with the sacred Pythia, the earth serpent herself. And then we've brought this month to Linnea, who has taken that and undergone shamanic practice to bring us the weave from the earth serpent herself. So we begin with the history of Pythia. Sarita.
In ancient Greece, Pythia is the high priestess and oracle of Delphi, residing in the temple of Apollo with a sacred stone, the omphalos. Covered in a protective weave and hollow inside, the omphalos stands at the center of power, a womb haven for healing, replenishment, and revelation. It is also the mystical dwelling place of Python herself and the sacred cave into which Pythia descends in order to commune with the great serpent. Pre-patriarchy, Pythia is the interface between humankind and spirit. Mistress of the liminal space, Pythia honors earth and spirit alike. And as a potent governing force, she stands on the fissure of betwixt and between, bringing to light prophecies and wisdoms from the depths of the Pythonic realms.
Thanks, Sarita. So now, Linnea in a moment is going to read the sacred weave to us with the question, what are the young bringing us or teaching us at this time and how can we support them? And we recommend that you listen with your eyes closed and in a relaxed state. You could be lying down or sitting, and just imagine you can open all of your pores and you'll be receiving these sacred words in this sacred weave through your pores, and so that they really go into every cell of your body. So, what are the young people here to teach us and how can we support them at this time? Linnea.
Child is born into this world naked and nude, naughty and rude. And then it begins. You slap us, you stab us, you hurt us. You hurt us. We are not ready to pick up our karma. We are not adolescents. We are children. We are young. We are your doorway to the spirit world. Listen to us. Listen to us. Listen to us. Are we the nature? We are raw. We are the raw human, raw, fresh, uncooked, uncultured, unsocialized, unknown. Yes, we want to be socialized. We want to be known. We want to be uncultured. We want to speak your language. We want to love you. And you will give us these things. Give us these things without the slap, without the stab, without the lies, without the deceit. Give us language. Give us love. For what we have to tell you is your future. Your future, not ours, yours. It will be our present. It is our present, for we have presents, gifts, presents and gifts. Let us be who we are. Who we are is your mirror. We are your mirror. We are your mirror. Whatever is living in you, you will plant it in us. So watch us carefully. Watch closely. Listen carefully. Listen closely. We will show you who you are. The sacred law is that nothing must be done to harm the children, and we are all Earth's children. You too are still a child. You too still have the children's heart. You can trust us to love it. You can trust us to love you, if you dare, because we do care. We do care. Let us be who we are, and we will show you such care and such love. Let us be who we are in the spheres of life, the sphere, the hollow sphere, the full sphere, the atmosphere, the atom's sphere. We are all Earth's children. We are all Earth's children, and nothing must be done to harm the children. How can you harm yourself in this way? How can you harm anyone? Nothing must be done to harm the children.
Thank you. Sarita.
Yeah, that was just that was really interesting. So I'm just going to speak to the kind of energy that came through, not necessarily the words, but it was just like, it was such a light, childlike energy, and then like throwing a truth bomb. You know, that's what it felt like. It was like, wham! You know how kids are, they just like, there's no deception there. They just speak their truth, and you know, often they like do really embarrassing things and whatever, and you know, they're not really embarrassing. It's just that we have this perception that they are. But the whole energy of that felt like it was like really fast and light and just chucking a truth bomb. And yeah, that's the first thing that really comes up, is that it felt like such raw truth on so many levels. And I'm personally going through this thing where my kids have just left home, and so I'm now reevaluating the entire way I brought them up, right? And it is not easy. And the mirrors that they bring as a parent at every stage is just extraordinary. It's like they're there to literally evolve you at speed if you'll allow them to. And that kind of, the energy that came from that weave, which was just amazing, Linnea, was just, that is the energy of having a kid. It's just, there's just so much love and lightness in there. But it's just like you're being hurled truth bombs the whole time. So it's this kind of, it's this lightness with this sort of pain as well that comes at you as you have to sort of, you know, wake up to these truths that continually being sort of shown to you, that you can't, or that one can't ignore if one's going to be authentic in their sort of parenting. And just to round off this bit of what I want to say is that, yes, we are all children, but we are also all parents. And as my children are leaving home, when I see other children around, I just want to kind of parent them and mother them and do the things that maybe I did wrong with my kids with them, right? You know, I don't know. It's like all of the children are ours, and all of us are ours, and we're all parents and we're all children simultaneously. So it's like we all have that responsibility, and yet we're all children too. So that was the first kind of impression that I got. So really extraordinary energy. Thank you. I've got to wait for a bit more of that to sink in.
Thank you. Joy.
Yeah, I went into quite a dream state then when I was listening to that, and I just felt so light, and I don't know, I was just getting images of just just lying on a hill and just gently rolling backwards. You know, when you're a kid, actually, it's not, you don't slowly roll backwards when you're a kid, you just go fast, don't you? But it was just that feeling. And I can't remember the exact sentence, but about the child within us as well. And, you know, it's so easy to, especially during current times, isn't it, to lose that innocence and lose that play and the laughter and that spontaneity of a child, and actually knowing that that is within us, and if we can just let go and bring that into the balance, to just ease things so much. And yeah, really sort of the bit about the sacred law, you know, the children's fire, and nothing must be done to harm the children. And what a different world we'd live in if everyone adhered to that sacred law. Nothing is done to harm the children. Yeah, we would be living in a very different world. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I really got that, the energy when you read that weave, Linnea, it was like you're channeling the children's voices in the collective. But I mean, for me as well, it was that child energy, but there was also urgency with it. That's what I got. You know, I had like this sense of urgency that we need to be listened to, and so in terms of the question that we went with was how do we support the children, and what are they teaching us? It's the same thing in that way. It's like, well, listen, and so they're teaching us hopefully to listen, and then we can support them by becoming listeners and hearing what it is they are telling us, they're sharing with us. And of course that is the child within as well. And yeah, we would be in such a different world if we could really connect with our own inner child and nurture that child. And yeah, there's that amazing sculpture, I don't know if you've seen it, and I don't know who did it, of two adults, and it's done in wire, it's really big, and they're kind of hunched up like that, facing opposite directions, and then in the middle of them is their inner child in the lighter form, facing each other and trying to connect. So beautiful. And it, yeah, and of course we have to connect with our own inner child, and before I think we can probably really hear what other children are trying to tell us, or what the young are trying to show us, and process the patterns. Actually, I wrote down patterns. Yeah, there was that line, whatever lives in you, you plant in us. And it made me think of those patterns that just go on, and when we don't resolve them, how we just project them onto other people and our children, and those patterns repeat, and then throughout generations. So it feels like it was a really full weave. Yeah, there's a lot here. Chelsea, you need to unmute.
Oh God, I woke her up now. This really hits home for me because, well, for everybody, I'm sure, but like in this very moment, I'm reading a book about parenting, and it's like sort of an old Laidlaw style, but it's more modern, and she travels around the world, and she notices that the Western model for parenting is not the norm, it's the minority. Or I have no vocabulary left anymore. Like, I'm just like, oh, plate. Anyway, so and just I won't like summarize the book or anything, but while we're really actually quite close to that style in our home, just naturally, a lot of the things that she points out, or that we're trying to change, is that we, for all the don't, like, rather saying consequences instead. Like, if you keep doing that, you're going to hit somebody. But what I really notice about it is what happens, because you said children are their mirrors, is what happens to me. Like, why am I doing those other things? Why am I rushing in this situation? I mean, we're pretty slow and laid back here anyway, but even I am like, I'll say a thing and then I'll say it again. Like, why? Like, just letting him process. And what we notice is that, like, the gently just saying, okay, let's go do a thing now. If I pause and don't rush him and try and get him to come to me immediately just because I said it was time, he comes. And he'll finish doing whatever he's doing, and he'll like sort of wander around because he wants to be a part of the family. It's in his, instinct to want to do what we're doing, to be a part of the family. So he will come. And we spend so much time training our children that they are solitary and different and don't belong. It's like the Western model is like, just models how you are different and you're not a part of the family, and you like go and you don't help us with work. You go in your room and you do your thing, and we go get stuff done because we're too busy to, like, we wait till you're busy until we get stuff done. And there's just this underlying current of like hurrying for no reason, and teaching the kids to be, in their rooms when they're teenagers, like ignoring you and not helping, and just sort of kicking them out of their natural desire to be a part of the unit. And what I find interesting about it is that if we let them, they teach us how to be back into community. They come out of the womb, they grow up naturally wanting to teach us how to be a village. And we constantly, as a society in the West, just beat that out of them and ourselves. And here we are, the nuclear family. I mean, I find it interesting because it seems to come down from the patriarchy. Like, she mentioned that the reason that we stopped living in villages because the Catholic Church decided that they wanted to change who married who and who was allowed to marry who. And eventually it broke us down into these, where we are now, are these solitary units, but our nervous systems are totally jacked because we're wired for village life. And I just think it's magical because the answers to our issues we have when we're born. It's like a fight to return to that. We're trying to get back to it now. And if I just watch my son, who's 2.5, like he already knows. It's pretty amazing. And I mean, I know everybody has a lot of different beliefs about what's happening in the world right now, and I won't say it out loud because of algorithm. But if it were a battle between good and evil, hypothetically, covering our kids' faces would be like the most strategic, incredible winning move you could make, because they are the ones that, it's their world, and they have the wisdom on how to be together with each other. And a blow to their kind of like, muzzling them in a way, not in a way, but in like a literal way, but that's going to carry on into next generations and stuff. It's as a symbol or a metaphor, it's really intense to cover our children's mouths, whatever you think. I mean, it's pretty intense. It's like a physical manifestation of what's going on with all of our inner children early. We're being, our childlikeness and our learning and our return to the village is like being stifled. And I think I can relate to that kind of image as a person, as an individual with like trauma or whatever. We all have that, like our inner child is being silenced. So but yeah, I guess I don't necessarily have a point, but it just made me think of that powerful line at the end about the children shall not be harmed, because that's our hope, and they have all the secrets. And I know that more now that I have my own, but yeah, they have so many powerful lessons about slowing down and being in the moment and all of that kind of cliche stuff, but they're like little Buddhas. They really, I mean, they have this kind of like fully expressed, I'm going to freak out because you cut the crust off the toast like I asked you to kind of thing. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But even then, it's a kind of a lesson in feeling your feelings out loud, which so many of us don't do. I watched my husband not be able to do that because it was just like knocked out of him over and over again. Like, your feelings are too big and they're inappropriate. So like, if he has them, he's like, I need a minute. And really he means I need a minute to go over here and shove them back where they came from. And my son is just like, and then he's like, anyway, what were we doing? Like, it just totally just gets it out and moves on. And it's just really like, it's incredible. The end. Like, I'm on an iPad and I don't know how to mute myself.
Linnea.
The weave, I did the weave while I was walking the 8, and it came out in waves. It was like, right? It came out in waves and waves and waves. And it was, I was crying really hard by the end of it. And it felt, it felt very pure to me. Like, I managed to vocalize it really quite purely. And it felt like this combination of, like, how do you say it? Like passion and like passionate love of like shaking us, like wanting to shake us awake. You know, it's like, don't you see what you have when we're in your life? You know, what we can offer you and what we can bring. Yeah, I don't have many thoughts about it. I still, when I'm reading it, I'm still kind of like feeling it, and it's urgent and it's passionate and it's loving and tender and gentle at the same time. So that's all.
I just when you were talking, Chelsea, about when we say to kids, don't do this and don't do that, it's interesting that we're so hooked on that in terms of our culture. Where I'm not talking about individual parenting, but just generally in culture, it's to stop. We prevent kids from doing stuff, and don't is a very predominant language. And interestingly, the primal brain doesn't recognize the word don't, it recognizes do. It's always focused on what's next, you know, how am I, you know, well, yeah, it's the do, it's the doing. So actually don't means do. And so if you like sit a glass of, say, I don't know, orange juice in front of a kid, or their favorite thing, and you say, I'm just going to pop out for a second, just going to go to the door and come back, and whatever you do, don't have that drink, or don't touch that sweet or that porridge or whatever, they won't be able to resist. So you're actually kind of working. So it's really hard psychologically for kids to process don't, because their urge is to do. So in our family, we always had that mantra, don't means do, don't means do, don't means do. So to flip that around. So it's about making sentences for them, which is, say, in a minute, you can have that drink, and they'll just wait. It's like, it's really interesting. And yeah, so I was reminded of that, and how just in the collective, certainly in our culture, bringing kids up, we are focused on the restriction of them and using this language, which actually works against the fundamental psychology and our fundamental nervous system of how we are to be in the world. And yeah, what you're saying, yeah, it's all about separating. And I remember when I had my first kid, a long time ago now, that I was thinking it was all about, at 6 months you get them into the nursery, at 6 months you stop breastfeeding, at 6 months you go back to work, at 6, you know. And it was all, and actually when I had her, I was like, actually it turns out that, well, actually, because my background is actually child developmental psychology, so it's like, so I was like, you know, mega focused, like, my God, how's this going to be when I have my kid, and will it all be, you know, will they meet the developmental stage, blah blah blah. But anyway, it turns out there's a big separation anxiety that happens between 6 and 7 months. There's a developmental leap where they want to explore more and they can start crawling, whatever, and so they actually need to be held safely in that separation, because when you do a good separation, the earlier if the good separations are really done really well when they're young, then as teenagers it's much easier transition. So the idea of actually separating at 6 months, which is what we often do in the Western world, generally stop breastfeeding, generally they go into their own room, and generally parents go back to work around that time, you're actually causing, or potentially there's really complex issues that go on for the nervous system and the brain to actually make sense of that, because what's happening is a natural separation, natural development. And if we suddenly separate the baby at that point, there's, you know, we're adding trauma at one level or another, you know. So yeah, it's really, whereas, you know, if we're in a community and the village and the old ways, if you were going off to make the lunch or do the hunter gathering or whatever, the whole community would come in and fill that space. The kids would never sleep on their own in a separate place. Everyone sleeps together. I mean, that's so weird, isn't it? For me, when I had my kid, I couldn't bear the idea of them being in a separate room. Even I remember coming back with my daughter when she was born, and I'd had a cesarean, so I couldn't move, and she was in the little cot thing and I couldn't pick her up, and she was crying, and I was like, where's her dad? Come in and get her. She is never going in that cot again. That's the end of that. And that was the end of that. And she was just, yeah, we just co-slept until she was 14. So yeah. That's what happened there. But I'm not really sure, a bit like you, Chelsea, where I'm going with this. Just that I was reminded that our focus in the Western culture is about separation, and actually we need to come home to ourselves as co-creators, as village people, as that family, that you know, we're a family, and we need to nurture and support each other. And that starts, I mean, I think primarily it starts with ourselves and that broken child within us, and then we can really be there for our kids. You know, obviously it's all a process and we're all doing it forever until we die. Life's a journey, but that's me. Linnea.
Yeah, I'm interested in what you're saying, Emma. I think I've lived in a small village, and like a few hundred people, and it was kind of painful, actually. I was really glad to leave, because there was a lot of lying and backstabbing and incest and adultery and a lot of really nasty things going on. And so I personally was really glad to escape that circumstance. And so I think village, it's important to keep a grip, like to keep a balance about, you know, like small groups can be as dysfunctional as large groups, maybe. And I wonder, like, I wouldn't respond in the same way that I would now if I was in that circumstance. I'd be stronger, for one thing. I'm older, way older. And I'm wondering if there's something about individuating, about being, knowing who I am now, and having a better grasp on right and wrong and how to handle painful situations, if there's if this is really valuable to bring into a village, like a small group of circumstances. What I love doing the most is collaborating with people who have, who know themselves, right? Who are not reactive, who are not acting out of pattern, who are not acting out of duty, who choose to be in a thing with me, in a project or a dynamic or something. That's the best. I really like that. And well, I'm thinking of one particular group of people that I work with, and it's they've all had their trials and their issues, and I'm thinking, to be able to come together and do that, to be able to be responsible and honest and caring and trusting. I don't think, I think you have to be the individual. I don't want to be closing down separation and individuation. Although I really love working together with other people, and I think village would be great, but it's I've got my own personal experience that goes, oh, that could be really bad. So, yeah.
Okay, 300. Before we go on, I just want to clarify, for me, separation is very different to individuation. So yeah, that's, so it was Chelsea, then Sarita, and then Joy.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that. So what Emma said, basically, those are really different things for me. I'm really somebody who likes to be by myself, and I'm kind of a weirdo, and the individuality and stuff, that's great. But what I know, what this woman in the book is saying, and other books, and then just examples of village culture, it depends on the village too, obviously. I think what happens to people okay, so let me just, in order to make a healthy individual, provided, that unless you're just on your journey, like Emma says, and you do your own work and you work it out, and you come from trauma and you're able to heal that wound. Aside from that, a way to make a healthy individual, a secure person, is to not force that independence on children, which is what we do. So, for example, we like to hurry children to get dressed on their own and not ask for help because big boys don't need help, like that kind of thing, which it seems counterintuitive. We want to force this on a young person, to hurry them into being able to do things on their own, or hurry them out of the bed or into their own room, because we don't want to coddle them or get them used to being held in this way, which is really funny, actually, when you think about it. You're we don't want you to get used to being, cared for a lot. And studies, not that we need them, but evidence will show that in these communities that are healthy and not full of people that are abusive, because that can carry on generationally, as we know. The results are that those, it's not like you coddle, you're just there for the person like you would with, sometimes we're kinder to animals and family pets than we are really to toddlers and small people that need help with things. It's really a shift of perspective. But those children that are held and allowed to stay in the bed, and which I think is supernatural, it's really weird to me to put, nowhere in nature do you see anybody putting their cubs in a separate dugout. What? Anyway, the more that we do that, we hold them and we let them learn to ask for help, because how many adults do you know that are good at that? None. But the more we let them do that and hold them and let them know that they're secure when they're little, the quicker and they're able to be an individual, the more secure they feel to go out there and be solitary. So it's just it's interesting, because I think that we think or Western culture is like, we're going to teach you now that there's not going to be anybody there for you, so that you feel great when you go out there to be alone. And like, that doesn't work. We're all healing this child wound where we're like, oh, I'm so insecure because nobody's ever been there for me. It doesn't, you don't go, nobody's ever there for me, this is great, I'm so confident in myself. So like giving those, just being present and being witnessed and being available, not like forcing your help on like Hoover or helicopter parenting, but your presence and your patience is like, and your physicality, which is huge, and obviously again in a healthy way, massive. And then that feeling of being held and cared for gives the safe space to discover who you are really and be a stronger individual. And that would be a massive shift in our society, our way of living, if we all were acting from a place of confidence in being an individual. Whoa, because I mean, how many relationships and jobs and stuff and life choices do you make because you feel like you're not good enough, or you're not sure of yourself? You let somebody else influence you, or then insecurity can present in other ways, like being narcissism. 1 in 6 people narcissistic, because that narcissist wound, it stems from the confusion of being present with giving children anything that they want in order to make them go away. Like it's a deep insecure wound that happens as a toddler, because there's not real attention there. It's just like, go away, go away, go away, have anything you want, shut up. It obviously is more complicated, but so even that comes from a lack of presence and togetherness in the family unit, which it just turns into you become an abuser out of insecurity. So I think if we listened and watched children, we had that village mentality, which is more like, if you see a mother alone, I mean, that's crazy to people who live in a village. Like, you need help. Like, why are you by yourself? And here, that is the norm. That is expected. Like the mom, even still in our like, oh, women, can do whatever. We're still doing everything, raising the kids. Like I'm very lucky, but I'm still, because naturally you're still bonded. Like Daniel wants to help, but like, unless I'm pumping shitloads of breast milk, I'm the one. So yeah, I'm kind of ranting. I'm good at that. But just to answer what Linnea was saying is that, and Emma, that community and village life, because I'm introverted, so like in my imagination, everybody lives like kind of in the same community, but in their own wicked separate houses, and we just wave at each other from the window. But like, so I understand the like not wanting to be like enmeshed, but I think, but there's a difference in like true community and village life that isn't poisoned, and it would change how children grow up and become like secure adults. Yeah. You and me.
Yay. Sarita.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of things. So, we're talking about individuation. I think what we're beginning to really notice now is there's this kind of, sadly, like a mass consensus and indoctrination into treating everyone sort of like cattle. And you're talking about the 6-month milestone, and you do this and and it's just like that. Everything's become so rigid, and if you can't conform to the very rigid structures and regulations and ideals, something bad's going to happen. It's like there's this like weird thing where everybody's trying to quash not just their children, which they are, but themselves as well, into these kind of rigid structures, which makes us literally like cattle. You know, that's what it feels like. And you know, the milestones and the doing, and we have to do this, and the grades have to be between this section and that section, and and it's like that. It's just, that's traumatizing, because when you go back to the weave, it's like the weave is this kind of, it's got this light burst of energy, which is what a child is. It's like a burst of creatorship, creator consciousness and expression, and that kind of you know, cattle thing that we're doing, and this is not saying anything bad against cattle themselves, but you know what I mean, it's like, you know, we're sort of herding the creativity, the God is probably the wrong word, but the creation out of our kids, so that they're absolutely stifled, and not only do they lose their own creativity, but they lose that sense of individuation, which is absolutely intrinsic in order to find that spark of divinity within that propels you into your purpose and into your joy and where you're moving forward. But it's funny as well, because simultaneously that kind of quashing becomes so intense that sometimes is what propels people out of that kind of constrictive mentality. So there's a kind of push and pull. And I think things are getting so bad that what we're actually seeing within the individual and within the consensus is like these sparks are bursting out, saying, I can't do this anymore. But it seems to be that this bursting out is coming from trauma. And a lot of what I was feeling when Linnea did the weave was not just the lightness and everything, but I was actually feeling this kind of incredible sadness about how on earth did we get here. And I just kept seeing these images of like little kids who are just so loving and just so themselves and so honest and open, and then they just get quashed for whatever reasons. And normally it's kind of ongoing trauma, basically through the ancestral lines and cellular memory and everything, and they just get quashed, you know. And so I think we are reaching this sort of this nexus point in humanity where that kind of squishing is creating this effect where people are beginning to burst out all over the place and say, no more, I can't do that. But simultaneously, I'm seeing this, you know, what I'm seeing is a lot of people who are so indoctrinated into regularity, conformity, the familiar, which is the opposite of creativity, that they don't even know how to, they couldn't find their way out. You know what I mean? They're just in it now. And I just wanted to say one more piece in alignment with that from what you were both saying. So basically, there have been these studies, I've been talking about them lately because I just saw this thing, but basically, in terms of gratitude, so gratitude, this is really interesting, changes the structure of the brain. It boosts the immune system. It does extraordinary things to your brain, okay? But it's not when you give gratitude, it's when you receive it. That's the thing. There are no changes when you give gratitude. When you receive gratitude, I guess, in presence, in the fullness of what it is, your brain just flourishes, as does your nervous system and everything, right? So this is the thing we've stopped doing to our kids. We've stopped giving them our attention, because we've got all these other things that just hold their attention, like devices and all the rest of it. And we've been indoctrinated to have our attention scattered and be too busy and trying to get back to work and the milestones and hurrying it all along and all of those things that you've been saying. But it's so interesting, isn't it? When you receive, you hit really extraordinary neural network and developmental milestones. That's what science is finding out. And I just think that's incredible. So all the children really want is to receive properly from us, and they want us to receive properly from them. And the whole weave was about, we're giving you this thing, why don't you just open your arms and take it, you know? And it's like, we're like, can't do that, we've got to be in like whatever, the cattle or sheep pens, or do what we're told, or heads down. Anyway, that was my kind of response to a mishmash of different things that were coming out there. So
thank you. It was Joy, and then Linnea, and then me. Joy.
Just really interested in what you just said, Sarita, about receiving. And I'm sure I saw a book somewhere in a bookstore just in the last couple of weeks, The Art of Receiving. And I remember thinking, oh, and I can't remember who the author was or anything, but I remember thinking, just clocking it, thinking, oh, but that's been coming up a lot for me recently about the receiving, and that beautiful reciprocity of giving and receiving, and how we just often just don't receive. Well, what I was going to say was, you know, I was having a conversation a few months ago with my eldest son, and he was saying some of his happiest memories of childhood was utter freedom and the carefreeness of it. Now he'll be 45 this year, so he was born in the 70s, and it was the norm then, you know, when he was about, it'd be unheard of now, before you think I'm a terrible mother, but when he was about 7 or 8, you know, we didn't live in the country, we lived in a built up area, but he and his friends would just go off on their bikes and they would have an amazing time. It was all about creativity. It was all, there was no computers or anything then. It was all just, you know, and they'd come back and I'd say, oh, what did you do? Oh, it was fantastic. We were climbing trees and we were playing manhunt, and then, you know, inventing all these games, and that was just the norm, and that's some of his happiest memories, you know. And then, of course, there's an 18-year gap between my youngest and my eldest, and it was very different. You know, I didn't give them the same freedom that I gave him, because there was more worry and fear then. And yet, I don't think it was any more dangerous when they were born. I think it was just, you know, the way society was and everything. But, you know, going back to the question, how can we support the children at this time? And I was thinking, yeah, how do we bring that carefreeness and that freedom back to children so they can just be children? And it's really hard, isn't it, with all the, well, not only what's going on, but also with all the computers and mobile phones. I mean, you know, you only have to go somewhere and all the kids are on the mobile phones and they're all on the games, and the adults are all on the phones, and it's just, yeah, but it just feels like all that'll implode anyway. And then, like what you were saying before, Sarita, maybe it just has to just implode to go to the polar opposite again. And yeah, it's just, I've just been just thinking about those things and how different my son's childhood was, my eldest son that is, to, you know, children these days, and that beautiful freedom and just carefreeness and inventing all the games, and oh yeah, just seems quite magical now. He's probably seeing it through rose-colored glasses, I'm sure, and so am I. I'm sure it wasn't all hunky-dory, but you know, there you go. It's just reminding me, because we did have this conversation a few months ago. So how do we support the children at the moment to bring that magic back? And you know, because, you know, I see it in my job, and I see it just not in my job as well, everywhere. You know, kids are just so burdened at the moment and full of fear, and oh God, it's just awful. So yes, just my musings. That's me.
Thank you, Linnea.
Oh, this is such a rich conversation. I'm trying to bring everything I've been thinking into one small paragraph, because I've got, you know, so I started asking, when you were talking about cattle, Sarita, and how everyone is regimented, I started wondering who benefits from that, right? Like, who benefits when we're all basically in lockstep, 9 to 5, got to get to work, put the kids in a farm, put the kids in a school farm, put them old people in another farm. It's like, who benefits from all of that? And it's like, well, guess it's the wealthy. Guess it's the very wealthy. Guess it's, the wealthy who are also moving into government and moving back to business and moving over to government and moving back to business. And it's like, it's kind of this, this is my socialist mentality here. It's like the 1% are really fucking us around. And then I remembered my middle career, like before I got into history and before I was a farmer, I actually did a lot of theater work, and I did a whole bunch of popular theater work. Working, that was when I had young children, and my best buddy also had young children. And so we developed a whole series about the oppression of mothers of young children, how mothers of young children experience this society. And then what do we had to do to change it? We call them theater forums. They're based out of Theater of the Oppressed work in Brazil. And we kind of took that and jammed Augusto Boal's social theory into 1990s Ottawa, which was kind of crazy. But it was very interesting because we began to understand that it's a system, like there's a system there, that mothers are kind of taking care of the real loose cannons of society, which are the little children, because they're loose cannons. They say and they do everything and anything. And so mothers, there's a lot of pressure on mothers to socialize those children, to teach them how to be proper. There's a hell of a lot of pressure from other older family members, from commercial media, from, whatever at that point. And wouldn't it be great if mothers refused to do that? And then my thought jumped to, I just took a course at the Yukon University about Indigenous governance. And I learned a whole lot about Indigenous governance. And there's this group on the West Coast in the Fraser Valley, kind of inland from Vancouver. And they were very explicit about their governance systems. And they have 5 different groups. And one group is people who are trained to speak on behalf of those who don't speak language. And that means they speak in council on behalf of the natural world. And then, one will speak for the coyotes, another speaks for the trees, another speaks for the grass, and so on. And then there's another group who speak in council on behalf of those in relationship. And that's where I was thinking about this. They speak on behalf of mothers, and they speak on behalf of mothers as mothers, or they speak on behalf of grandparents as grandparents. And they're conscious to how a decision will affect those relationships. And then there's a couple of other quadrants that speak, but I just thought that's beautiful, like having people pay attention to what a decision will do to a relationship, That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to add my thoughts, and then might be time to bring it to a close. So yeah, I wanted to add to that, Sarita, when you were talking about gratitude. I feel like a penny has finally dropped for me, because I have done gratitudes and I've got gratitude journals, and they have never worked for me. It's so many self-help people go, do your gratitude, do this. So I was like, oh wow, okay. They have never worked ever. So now I feel like the pennies drop, because when I receive a thank you, I can feel my body light up. And then that is, so that has, really flipped that on its head for me. And I thought, yes, that feels really good to know that. And you really get that in kids, and how children naturally are like that with each other. They'll naturally give things to each other, and they'll be like in awe of it and thankful, and it's so beautiful. And I think that beauty gets squashed by the whole system, and it is like a farming system. I mean, I did my degree in education, and when I did that, I thought, if ever I have kids, they're never going to school. It just isn't going to happen. So and actually what I did was so my daughter went to forest school for her whole primary years and ended up basically just running around a forest and fields for the first kind of, I don't know, 6-7 years of her life until she went to secondary, which she wanted to do. So I was always in communication with her about what she wanted, which I had a lot of criticism for, spoken and unspoken, like, oh, will she be able to take her exams when she's older? Will she be able to do this? Or why is it sometimes she was home educated? So, so much. And I was just like, no, she knows what's right for her. I can show her the options and she can choose. And I let her choose. And she's doing really well with what she wants to do. So so I'm really glad she had those years till about the age of 10 or 11, just running around learning about life and trees and insects and nature, and through being part of it and through being through observing how nature is in its own ecosystems. And she was teaching people how to create fires, I would say sacred fires or bonfires, or not like pyrotechnics. She was giving lessons on that when she was 8 or 9. So it's been amazing just allowing that process to happen rather than conforming to the system. And it has been tough because it means I'm outside the system, and there has been a lot of umming and ahhing and weird looks, but I'm used to that shit, so hey ho. What I've learned from that is that I have been taught so much, and also I have another child who's very different needs to my daughter, who is home educated, and I'm just learning. And I think we have a tendency, or massive tendency, certainly in our culture in the West, to think somehow that children don't know anything and that they're somehow lesser than, or somehow we're better than, and that we know. And actually, just as you said, Chelsea, right at the beginning, and this is what I really believe this, they come in knowing all they need to know. They know how to connect. They know how to ask for stuff. They scream or cry. They let us know as babies very quickly that something's up and they have a need that must be met right now. And contrary to a lot of things, if you meet that need immediately, their whole nervous system knows they're safe and that their needs are met and they're cared for, which allows them to relax and deepen in trust of being in the world. And their whole brain expands, neural connections are made. If we delay that need, and I know sometimes we have to for practical purposes, but if we deliberately delay it, for example, in the method of controlled crying and that kind of parenting, you're actually traumatizing the nervous system. And there was a study done in Britain a number of years ago on attached parenting, and the idea of mothers or primary carers not going back to work, or at least being much more present for the child. And the result was, obviously, in a way, that when we sever that tie age 3 in Britain, they go to preschool and then that leads on to school, so it's very early separation. There is trauma. There's a separation trauma in the child, and that study was shut down straight away as soon as those findings came out, because it didn't suit the narrative, which was getting mums back to work, blah blah blah. Now, I'm not knocking mums going back to work. I work myself. I'm just saying, somehow we need to, for me, I feel there needs to be a sort of a restructuring of the way it's done with farming everyone off. The elders go into care homes, the children go into school. After the summer holidays, I actually have a grief, or after any holidays, when you go in the streets, there's no kids there. It's like, where is this part of our society? They're in a school and it's silent. The streets are silent. So yeah, I know we're in a different society than we would have been thousands of years ago, pre-patriarchy. I know we're not in that village way of life, and I kind of say that metaphorically rather than actual villages. But yeah, and that we've all got busy lives, and that women want to work and blah blah blah. Of course. What I'm saying is, somehow we need a revisiting of who we are and how we support the kids, the children, the babies, and how we can bring love to that. Because I think through love and openness and the willingness to listen to them, to meet their needs, to meet our own needs of our own child within, we have a possibility of creating something new that will serve us now in the times that we're living right now. And I think that comes back to love. That's what will open the doors to finding the threads that bring us the practical answers that we can create and build something that serves us now. Because obviously we're in very different times to where we were thousands of years ago. So that's where I was at. Chelsea, and then we're gonna round it up like a herd of cattle.
Yeah, I won't ramble on too long this time, but you just hit a couple of things that I want to say that's like really interesting. One, school, you guys probably know this, but maybe listeners don't know it, but like public school is modeled after factory work. So it's meant to train children to respond to having a job at a factory, basically being a drone, like the alarms and the scheduled lunch and the recess and all that stuff. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's actually modeled after factory work. So right away, I mean, Linnea was talking about like, who does this benefit? Like this destruction of the village life. And if we're talking about how like the Catholic Church started it a long time ago, and now the elite continue on this, like, okay, we need workers in the factories. And also women going back to work, like you're not even allowed to say like women should be home with the children because it's like inflammatory, which is crazy. But like, again, there was a sort of push for that because it is yet another taxable income. Like, so children in daycare, women are at work, tax, men are at work, tax, like the family's not together. So in the family, the kids are off learning to go be taxable income. Like if you break it down, it's like, go train your kid to work in a factory while you go work in a factory, and then the mom goes work in the factory. Like, but what I wanted to say about the gratitude thing, which is really interesting because I see it with my mom and in myself, we're taught that like it almost makes my mother uncomfortable to receive gratitude. Like the receiving part, we're sort of taught that that's like a weird selfish thing, and we're supposed to do things with zero expectations so that we don't get gratitude, because wanting it is like some kind of thing you need to work on. Like liking that feeling or like doing something so you get the appreciation is like really frowned upon. It's really deeply ingrained in our culture to like just do it out of the kindness of your heart because, and you should, I mean, like that's great, but it's like you should do this and like not do it for the feeling that you get. But so many people I talk to say that they like to be in jobs or do things to help people because it makes them feel good. And that's really essentially the same thing, because you like to help people because of the receiving of the gratitude that you feel. Even if nobody says thank you, you're just like, you can see it on their face and you're like, and that's like in your DNA, because that is how a village would work successfully, is that everybody doing things because they love the feeling of receiving gratitude, right? So like on top of everything else, you have to learn not to like that feeling because it's selfish. So I can do it on my own, furthering your like sense of isolation. I can do it on my own, and or I'm going to do this thing because out of the goodness of my heart, but please don't thank me. And my baby's farting, so I'm going to let you mute me now.
Thank you. Wow. Okay, I'm just going to, before we sum up, there's two things. One, just for clarification, public school in the States is all schools. In Britain, public school is private education. So we have state and private, which private equals public. So just for technical, practical clarification. Secondly, Chelsea, I think you invented a new word, taxical. Love it. Okay, we're going to go to our final thoughts on this. I think this is a topic and a weave that we could just discuss for hours and hours. It's so fascinating and interesting. So perhaps it will come up in the future again. Who knows? But for now, we're going to sum up with a sentence or two. So, Joy, final thoughts.
Oh, I just keep thinking about the sacred law that was mentioned, you know, the children's fire, the pledge that no harm shall come to the children, and that also feels like it includes the child within us as well. And yeah, what a different place it'd be, what a different planet it would be if that law was adhered to by all, yeah, to support the children and allow them their freedom and their play.
Thank you. Linnea, final thoughts.
My final thoughts are that patriarchy and capitalism are death-loving systems, and I would really like to see an entire society predicated around supporting, for example, Chelsea. So that Chelsea has, and all the other mothers of young children have everything they need, both emotionally and materially, to just love their babies, nothing but love. I hope.
Thank you. Chelsea.
I hope she's not super distracting, but I figured right at the end I'd stick her face in there so she can say some stuff about it. Final thoughts are just personally, like, talk around village life has always been very uncomfortable, so I've been unpacking that. And these kind of conversations are really helpful. Just saying that I like staying home, and I like being home, and being a stay-at-home mom makes it sound like it's passive, like you're chilling or something, but it's like not like that at all. Like, so just saying that and is nice, and it's important, and really letting my babies teach me that it's okay to want community around me. I'm like a dedicated hermit, so that's been a really interesting journey to go on. That I would like that. It feels radical to say that in this world that we live in. That, like, I want to re-village, but I'm learning that from my kids because I'm letting them teach me. So that's it.
Thank you. Sarita.
Yeah, I'm like Joy. I kept coming back to the phrase, I think at the end, this is really important: stop hurting us, stop hurting the children. And in that, stop hurting ourselves, because also when we hurt our children through unconscious action and unconscious conditioning, it damages our soul, and we're just like passing it on and passing it on. And so I think, again, what Chelsea's saying, having these kind of conversations, being able to unpick how you were hurt as a child, in a safe way. We need to kind of relearn all of that. That's like looking at the shadow, doing the inner child work. And it's just absolutely imperative, because what we're just doing is we're just passing on that stuff as like bad habit, because that's the thing we do. And then of course those elites and whoever are just ramping it up. You know, they're ramping up the trauma, because it's the trauma itself stops us being able to unpack that hurt. So if we can have the courage to unpack our own, the way we hurt ourselves, our own inner child, the way we keep, you know, whacking ourselves with unworthiness and all of those things, if we can have the courage to do that, knowing that when we do that work, we unpack it for future generations. It's a process. And I think the sadness I got from the weave is there's so much we are harming the kids. We really, there's just so much damage in a myriad of ways, you know, whether it's from war to, you know, living off chemicals, to whatever we're doing. It's just like we're just in this kind of unconscious thing of harm. So I think we have to the courage to stand up and look at all of that, and these kind of conversations I feel really greatly help. You know, stepping out from the narrative and having the courage to go, actually, wait a minute, there's something really wrong here, and no, I'm not doing that anymore. So that's my final thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I don't even really, what are my final thoughts? I think for me it's coming back to the part in the weave where it was that we are the mirror, we're the mirror. And when we can, I think, yeah, there's something about being able to really look into the eyes of a child and to see that light, and to know that your light, our light, my light is just as bright. And I think we've lost that, or lost that understanding. It gets buried with everything that we've all talked about, all the patterns, the squashing, the farming off, and all of it, the systems. And so uncovering the light within, I think children can really show us that when we really look in, you know, look into the eyes of the babe and feel that reflected. So that, yeah, and if we can nurture our own light, then we would never want to harm anything, because we would know its beauty. And yeah, and I wish that for all of us and for the earth. My final thoughts. So on that note, it brings this month's Pythia to a close, and we look forward to seeing you all again next time. Until then, we wish you well in deep love and connection. Bye-bye.